wanted to rule the world. He wanted to challenge the most powerful kings on Earth. Who's this guy? Started from scratch. Where did this man come from and what did he want? We will know everything about Napoleon today. Please subscribe to the channel and click the like button. History books lie. Looking into the eyes of this 10-year-old child, you wouldn't see a boy. You would see the arrival of a monster. While others played, he isolated himself, studying the blueprint of empires. Counselor noticed his silence, sensing an ambition that would burn the world. On fading maps, he marked Europe as his future battlefield. The old fortresses stood witness to the silence before the slaughter, a broken compass pointing toward his only destiny, absolute dominion. As darkness settled, a shadow rose to swallow the world whole. He swung that heavy blade, preparing to hold 1,000,000 real swords. Every secret letter written was a hidden brick toward his throne. Paris was unaware he was coming, but a brutal betrayal was already waiting. They mocked his accent and poverty. They thought they were bullying an outsider. They were training a wolf. In that freezing room, he didn't cry. He counted every insult, calculating the day he'd collect his debt. While they wasted wealth on luxury, Napoleon mastered patience. To him, human emotions were just gears to control. His teachers wrote in his records, "This boy is made of granite, and there is a volcano inside him." His teachers wrote in his records, "This boy is made of granite, and there is a volcano inside him." He whispered to the frost, "Enjoy your inherited titles today. Tomorrow, you will beg me for them." His mind became a weapon. He looked at cities not for their beauty, but for how they could be captured. An outsider in a country that hated his bloodline, he climbed the ranks with a terrifying persistence. The old world order was rotting away, and the smoke of revolution was exactly the chaos he needed. Turning a winter game into a brutal exhibition of tactical genius, he forced his bullies to surrender. But then, a hidden strike. Toulon burns. Britain dominates the harbor. A young officer steps out of the smoke and takes command. Amid chaos and fire, Napoleon stays calm, seeing war as calculation, not fear. The generals mock his plan. He doesn't argue. He promises victory in 3 days. In rain and mud, he drags the cannons himself, earning his soldiers' loyalty. His batteries fire. British warships explode one by one in the dark sea. The enemy counterattacks. Napoleon holds his ground, knowing retreat means ruin. He charges into the smoke, turning panic into fierce resistance. He's struck down in the mud, wounded, but refuses to stop the attack. At dawn, Toulon is saved. The British fleet retreats in defeat. He is promoted, but in the shadows, political forces close in. 40,000 rebels marched to tear Paris apart. Only one man stood in their way, and he didn't blink. No warnings, no negotiations. Napoleon knew mercy was a weakness. He chose to speak in raw terror. Politicians begged for restraint. Napoleon ignored them, waiting until he could smell the rioters' breath. Fire! The cannon screamed, unleashing a geometric eradication that shredded the rebel front lines. In 10 minutes, the rebellion was dead. With a single whiff of grape shot, he saved the Republic. Overnight, the hated outsider became a hero. Aristocrats who desired his death now threw rose petals at his boots. Then he met his match, Josephine, a master of battlefields, yet utterly defenseless against her glance. A whirlwind of passion and ambition. They married in secret, a union born of deep, obsessive desire. 2 days later, he was sent away to lead a starving army, a promotion, and a polite exile. He rode out ready to conquer kingdoms for her, unaware she had already welcomed another man into his bed. "30,000 starving men trapped in the freezing hell of the Alps, until he roared, 'I will lead you into the most fertile plains on earth.' In 5 minutes, beggars turned into fanatics. They didn't follow France. They followed a man who promised them the world. He tore up the rules of war. While enemies slept in warmth, Napoleon marched through impossible icy peaks like a midnight thunderbolt. At the Bridge of Lodi, Austrian cannons were shredding everything. Panic set in. The French army was about to be destroyed. Napoleon didn't wait. He grabbed the flag and charged into the hail of bullets alone. His men let out a feral roar and followed. The bridge fell. That night, Napoleon wrote, "I realized I was not an ordinary man, but destined for things beyond human imagination." Yet while conquering Italy, Paris conquered his soul, writing desperate love letters to Josephine filled with madness and agonizing jealousy. Terrified of his massive popularity, the government in Paris realized they had created a monster. They needed a campaign to kill him. They sent him to the burning deserts of Egypt, a suicide march. But in the deep sea, the deadliest predator, the British fleet, was already closing in. He became the master of Italy, looting millions and redrawing maps without permission. He was already acting like an emperor. Would this be the end of Napoleon's destiny, or was his greatest legend about to begin? "40 centuries watched as Napoleon faced the Mamelukes under the burning Egyptian sun, a clash of ancient legends and modern war. The Mamelukes charged fiercely, but French infantry squares turned their attack into slaughter against disciplined bayonets. Napoleon stood before the Sphinx, trying to turn Egypt into his myth, as if history itself was watching him. At sea, the British destroyed the French fleet, trapping Napoleon in Egypt with no escape and no reinforcements. The desert consumed his army with disease, hunger, and madness as morale collapsed. His eastern dream died at Acre, where plague and defeat turned conquest into ruin. France called for help as chaos and invasion threatened Paris, demanding a strong leader. Napoleon abandoned Egypt at night, risking everything to return and seize power in France. In Paris, he entered a political trap where betrayal and conspiracy were already waiting. He was surrounded by power games and hidden knives. Was Napoleon returning to save France, or to take control of it forever? The coup erupted into chaos as furious politicians turned on Napoleon and branded him a tyrant. Did Napoleon's own brother really threaten to kill him, or was it all part of the plan? Soldiers stormed the chamber, ending the Republic and securing Napoleon's victory. Napoleon quickly outmaneuvered his allies and became France's first consul. At 30 years old, he stood as the most powerful man in France. He rebuilt the nation, but Europe's armies were already preparing for war. Even at the height of power, his relationship with Josephine was falling apart. To save France, Napoleon led his army across the frozen Alps once again. At Marengo, Austrian forces shattered his plans and pushed him to the brink of defeat. As Desaix arrived with reinforcements, one bullet threatened to destroy Napoleon's last chance of victory. Napoleon crowned himself emperor inside Notre Dame, taking power in front of the Pope and all of Europe. He crowned Josephine empress, turning his private life into royal spectacle and absolute control. European kings united in fear, forming a massive coalition to destroy him. The Grand Army marched across Europe as a flawless military machine under his command. At Ulm, Napoleon trapped an entire Austrian army and forced a total surrender without a major battle. At Trafalgar, Britain crushed the French navy, ending Napoleon's dream of invading England. At Austerlitz, Napoleon lured Russian and Austrian armies into a perfect trap in the fog. As the sun broke through, his attack split the Allied army and collapsed their entire formation. Frozen lakes turned into mass graves as fleeing soldiers were destroyed by French artillery. A frightening message arrived. He was shocked. What could it contain? And this time, Napoleon wouldn't see the strike coming. In less than 19 days, Prussia collapsed. Napoleon entered Berlin at the height of his power. The mysterious letter had carried a warning about Russia. Napoleon ignored it, and at Eylau, in blood and snow, he received his first real shock. His army could bleed. At Tilsit, Napoleon and Tsar Alexander met as allies and divided Europe between them. Then he launched an economic war against Britain, betting all of Europe on a single gamble. But Spain became a festering wound, draining his finest armies year after year. To secure an heir, Napoleon sacrificed the only woman he truly loved. He married an Austrian princess, gained a son, and believed his dynasty would last forever. Then Russia broke its promise and reopened its ports to British trade. Furious, Napoleon assembled the largest army Europe had ever seen and marched toward Russia. On the very first day, he fell from his horse, and he had no idea the real war had not begun yet. Will Napoleon survive? Napoleon fought like a cornered tiger in his final campaign. Against all odds, he kept winning brilliant victories. His exhausted army of young soldiers followed him to the end. For a moment, it seemed he could still save France. But victory on the battlefield was no longer enough. Paris had already fallen into enemy hands. The empire he built was beginning to collapse around him. Still, Napoleon prepared for one final defense of the capital. Then his most trusted marshals stepped out of the shadows. They came not with loyalty, but with the act of abdication. They forced him to abdicate. Alone and broken, Napoleon chose poison over surrender. But the poison failed. Even death seemed to reject him. Exiled to Elba, the fallen emperor waited in silence. Then he escaped under darkness and sailed back to France. An army was sent to arrest him, but Napoleon faced them alone. Standing before their rifles, he challenged them to shoot. Instead, the soldiers rushed to his side. Within days, he returned to Paris and reclaimed his throne. Europe united once more, determined to destroy him forever. At Waterloo, as the battle began, a mysterious army appeared on the horizon. But it seemed that Napoleon body made betrayal. Waterloo was a meat grinder. Napoleon unleashed the Imperial Guard, his final hope for victory. For 20 years, these veterans had never known defeat. Then, for the first time, they began to break. As the Prussians arrived and the French lines collapsed, Napoleon's empire crumbled with them. He wanted to die on the battlefield, but his generals dragged him away from the disaster. The British exiled him to St. Helena, a lonely island far from Europe. The conqueror of Europe became a prisoner, watched day and night by armed guards. Yet even in exile, he fought one final battle, the battle for his legacy. As illness slowly consumed him, he spent his final years reliving the memories of his greatest victories. On May 5th, 1821, Napoleon died on St. Helena, far from the world he once ruled. But his legend survived. Empires vanished, centuries passed, and the name Napoleon